Holla ballers, what's going on? It's Breacher, and I thought we should have a little focus on the Monkey Monk. Monkey Monk's going to be the biggest, the most changed class, probably, in Warlords of Draenor. Not surprising, here's the latest class to be added to the game. It's likely to be the one that's suffering the most, so we're going to have a little focus on the Monk over the next few days or so for those people who are thinking about the Monk and how it's going to be developed and grow. It's always early days for a brand new class. Takes a while to really find its feet. Monk's not done too badly, though. They came into it with some good knowledge. They've added classes in the past. They've seen what kind of problems they can come up against. Not to say that they don't need updating. They don't need changing. There's some things that haven't worked out. So we're going to kick off with the Mistweaver. This is my favourite healing class in the game by a fucking mile. I've got to say, I love this thing. I enjoy playing it every time I go in. I don't play it a lot. I don't play it a lot because it's a little bit on the frustrating side sometimes. But in terms of the gameplay, the Mistweaver Monk is an astonishingly well-made class. I just find it a real testament to what can be done with a healing class. So what's Blizzard doing with it? A lot. They're doing a lot with it. And the big boiling pot at the moment is what Blizzard seems to be changing isn't quite what the players want to see changed. And is that correct or is it not? So, as we know in Warlords of Draenor, the big thing with healers is mana! Mana. And Blizzard stands atop its mountain crying down that you will care about mana. So a couple of things on that. One, Mistweavers are the worst offender for this by a long way. Ever since even mid-Throne of Thunder, if not earlier, Mistweavers just didn't give a shit about mana at all. They really didn't care. They were generating so much mana from Mana Tea that it just made no sense. And in fact, every Mistweaver worth his salt has removed as much spirit from his gear as possible in order to really emphasize the point that mana and regen just do not matter. It's not how they regen mana. They have different methods of doing it. There you go. Blizzard is saying, no, that's not our intention. We didn't really want you to do that. We want you to care about mana. Stop it, stop. So my response to the first part of this is why? Why is that a problem? Why does every healer have to care about mana? DPS and tanks have proven time and again that they don't need to have the same resources in order to produce good results. So why does every healer have to be tied to mana? I actually very much enjoy that the Monk doesn't care about mana. In fact, it cares more about its chi. This other resource, this interesting resource that we've got going on, and managing that more effectively. Mana is there. It's a thing. You play badly, and surely mana's going to come back and bite you in the ass. And every healer should have something that can go wrong and leave you thinking, I need to switch my gameplay a little bit. And the way mana worked for the Mistweaver, and still works to this day, I actually thought was pretty cool. If you screwed it up and you didn't play with your chi correctly, then the byproduct of that was that mana would become an issue. Blizzard says, no, we don't really want you to do that. We don't really like the idea that you're generating so much Mana Tea that in fact you're not caring about mana at all. We want you to care about it more. Mistweavers don't really have a problem with it. In fact, a lot of healers don't have a huge issue with mana anymore, but the Mistweavers were more than happy to be working on their other resources as a primary objective. So in my opinion, I kind of don't think it's the right way to go with the Mistweavers. The big problem that the players have is something that doesn't seem to be being addressed, and that's kind of a problem, isn't it? We have an issue with this class, and it's not the one you're trying to fix. And therefore the players are going, what? Yeah, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. You want us to care about mana, you want us to be punished for being overly spammy, but we kind of have bigger problems with that, Blizz. We have bigger issues to resolve, and there's some stuff that we don't want to care about, and there's things that we want to care about, and you don't seem to have got them in the right order. The problem is this. Over the course of Mr. Pandaria, the Mistweaver Monk has been dropped more and more. It's been removed from raids on several occasions, and in many cases, especially in progression guilds, they just weren't carrying Mistweavers at all for many fights in the Siege of Orgrimmar. They just weren't welcome. They had no purpose. And in a world of bring the player, not the class, it's not nice that that player has to have a healing alt in order to contribute to his raid. Because there's a certain problem there where, yeah, we want you as a player because you're fantastic, but your class is actually that weak that we don't want you there. Now, of course, as the lower end you go in terms of progression, people will just say, it's fine, come on a Mistweaver. They're not terrible, but if you have the choice, which a lot of these top guilds do, and even the sort of mid to higher level guilds do, then you have that choice, and your choice is not to bring a Mistweaver. Why? Why? Mistweavers suffer in Mists of Pandaria, from the obvious one. They have no absorbs. Big problem, but that is to be fixed, apparently, in Warlords of Draenor. They are a pure raw healing class. That doesn't play well in Mists of Pandaria at all. But you could say, oh, there's other classes who are pure raw healing, right? The Druids, they still got their place. Yes, they did. So what was it about the monks they didn't like? Couple of things. We generate a lot of chi as Mistweaver, but we don't really have great ways to spend it. We don't have great ways to spend it. And once you even get a modicum of gear, a real trivial amount of gear, you'll more than notice that often you're spamming huge spells just to get rid of the chi. You'll be spamming your uplift and healing nobody, essentially, for 0 healing, although that heal might be for several 100,000, potentially, and you're just healing nobody. Why? You've captured chi, and there's nothing you can do about it, and you don't really have another way of spending it. You have a single target heal, which is considered very, very poor, and that's about it. I don't really have much of a choice. Tank doesn't really need healing. I might get a couple of heals out of it, or I could just spam an uplift, and I can keep my rotation going because this is how this class works. It procedurally generates chi to spend chi in order to generate more chi. It's a cyclical process, and we're stuck on full chi, and we don't have many great options to do something with it. A couple of suggestions towards that would be the Mistweaver Monk is more than ready to possibly become that hybrid buff class that a lot of players have been crying out for. A lot of players have been asking for that class that doesn't need to be the best healer, but actually provides another resource. It takes me back to the idea of Wrath of the Lich King, I believe. Wrath of the Lich King, I want to say Wrath of the Lich King, where a Druid's rejuvenation was actually providing things like runic power and energy and rage. And a really good Resto Druid was, of course, keeping rejuvenations ticking on the melee at all times. Because that was providing an extra minor but good support to the raid. It was certainly nothing game-breaking, but a good player was able to manage that extra process of his class in order to be a little bit more helpful to his raid. There are some encounters that just don't require a lot of raw healing, and when that happens, the monk is just effectively useless. Really useless. So why can we not maybe look at ideas where Enveloping Mist is actually doing something a little bit more than just being a rather paltry hot with a bit of a burst to it? If it was doing something else that isn't game breaking, that is quite cool, like another way to spend our chi. Oh, I've got full chi right now. Who's my best melee DPS? So I'm going to stick an extra Enveloping Mist on him, and therefore I'm not just wasting this huge amount of heal. They are the kings of the overheal. My god! And this is why. Because when we have full chi, and people don't need healing, our choices are to just waste a heal in order to use that chi, because we're going to be generating more. And nobody hates anything more than wasted resources. That is a nightmare. The other aspect that the monks want fixing, and has caused them problems throughout Mists of Pandaria, is the fact that they're very reliant on their main heal, which is Uplift, being based on a heal that you can't control. And oftentimes you're throwing out Renewing Mists on classes that haven't yet really taken damage because you need to be using it to keep your chi flow going. And you're just randomly picking people who can take it and hoping for the best, really. More often than not, what will happen is you'll throw out Renewing Mists on cooldown, as you're supposed to do, as the class is designed. The class is designed around that. And the people who actually take damage aren't the people with a Renewing Mist on them. And you're now relying on the game to pick them for the next Renewing Mist, but due to the mechanic of it jumping one at a time, then you have this huge problem where you're just not able to deal with it before somebody else, like a Resto Druid, has slapped a Wild Growth on that person and dealt with all the situation, and your healing goes to waste yet again. In World of Spamcraft, which is the current healing style, Mistweaver monks are really, really bad. Really bad. Once healers get to a stage where they can be more affluent with their mana and they can be a little bit more greedy and throw it around willy-nilly, then Mistweavers just fall further and further and further behind because their spammability is great. They can spam all day. Like we said, mana's not an issue. The problem is their choice of who to spam on is kind of tied to a resource they can't control. You can control your first jump. After that, you're kind of fucked. It's going wherever it wants to go, and that is the end of the story. Like it or not, that is how it works. And then your main one of two chi spenders is reliant on that. Is reliant on those people. And if those aren't people who need healing, then that uplift again, even if it's actually useful, even if people have taken damage, but they don't have Renewing Mist, are not going to get any benefit from that. But so far, we've not seen anything being done about that. Nothing being done to actually remedy that problem, and you can see why this is a problem in the raiding sphere. If you can't really be specific about who's going to get the benefit of these things, then a lot of the times your heals are going to waste, and it's not actually something you can do anything about. Really sad. This reliance on Renewing Mist is also twofold. Not only can we not control it, but we actually need it to be going very smoothly. We need to use it on cooldown for the reasons mentioned before, in case somebody takes damage or a big burst AoE is coming and we want as many Renewing Mists ticking as possible. And then something happens which is part of the encounter. Mind Control, Garish Hellscream. Once he mind controls, it takes 9 seconds for a Mistweaver to actually get his healing rolling, to get all those Renewing Mists ticking and rocking and going. And then you get mind controlled, and suddenly you are set back not only the duration of mind control, where you cannot cast, but you're also then set back because your Renewing Mists have started to fall off, and now you've got to start recasting them before you can ramp up your healing again. No other class suffers like that. No other class has to deal with this ramp up time in terms of healing. Their ability to be spot healing is extremely weak as a Mistweaver. Extremely weak. Again, something Blizzard's not really focused on. They don't really seem to be addressing that issue, but it's a common sense problem. You can see why this is an issue. If your healing needs a ramp up time and you can't really control it to an extent, then you're going to have a pretty bad time. The Mistweaver is one of the greatest healing classes ever developed in my mind. The gameplay and style is fantastic. What I think a lot of players want is a little bit more control over where their heals are going to go. Smart heals are getting nerfed, but we've not seen a great deal of things said about Renewing Mist and its ties to Uplift. We want another Chi Spender, at least a good one. Chi Explosion is just another AoE heal. Sure, we can be a little bit more placement with it now. We can stand in there, but what if they just don't need it? Why can't we have some Chi Spenders that actually do something a little bit different? Do they have to heal? It's nice that we're getting a DPS stance now. So it reduces the amount of keybinds that some Mistweavers are dealing with. A good Mistweaver doesn't care. Yeah, okay, I get another stance to do my Eminence healing in. Fine. But as we've seen over Mists of Pandaria, Eminence is a lot of focus and a lot of effort for very little reward. In fact, you can tend to suffer from doing it on some occasions. How that will play out in Warlords of Draenor, I don't know. We don't really want to talk about specific numbers at this stage because we don't know what's going to happen. That's the Mistweaver in a nutshell for me. Those are the things I want to see addressed more than we have seen. All we've seen is a reduction in the amount of Chi we're going to get with Soothing Mist and not actually generating Chi anymore, reducing our ways down of actually getting Chi, and that's about it. Mana is Blizzard's focus. I don't think that should be the focus, though. What do you Mistweavers think? Do you want to see just a couple of nifty things to do with our Chi? These are the big problems. I want to not be amazing on fights like Garrelon. People remember that. Mistweavers were dominant there, where the raid was all over the damn place, and Renewing Mist, and everybody needed healing all the time. And then be completely useless because of the actual mechanics of rendering us useless, and our healing is uncontrolled, and therefore we are miles behind those who can do things like a Wild Growth or a Holy Radiance or just a Chain Heal. A Chain Heal compared to setting up an Uplift on the right people, there's no competition whatsoever there. Mistweavers need a lot more work than what we seem to be getting yet, I think. And then they would be something truly extraordinary. Because as I say, despite all these issues I've talked about, the Mistweaver is easily my favourite healing class in all of Mists of Pandaria. And I hope it goes on to do great things. Alright guys, we'll be looking at Brewmaster next. Because I like tanking. Have a good day guys. I'll see you later.